Okay, welcome to the 15th common session of SunoikisisDC Digital Classics 2017. Today we have our first session about digital papyrology. We have two sessions this semester. This is the first one about documentary papyrology, and then next week we have another session for literary papyri. And today we have many guests. The first one is Nadine Quenouille from Leipzig. She's a papyrologist working here in Leipzig. And then we have from London, Gabriel Bodard and Lucia Vannini. She's a PhD candidate working on digital papyrology. So Lucia, welcome to Sunoukisis. Well, Gabriel, you are a big contributor of Sunoukisis, so I don't have to introduce you. And well, we can start. You have a class outline in GitHub with a long description, readings, also an exercise. I think we can start with Nadine. Okay, Nadine, welcome. Okay, I can start presenting, and here we are.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first course in digital papyrology, an introduction into documentary papyri. Today we want to show you how to do research on a specific theme, the manumission of slaves, using digital papyrological tools. In the first 15 minutes, I will provide you with a quick historical overview and an overview concerning papyrology. Then I will show you how to approach a theme in digital papyrology by showing you the bibliography Papyrology, the Heidelberger Gesamtverzeichnis, the papyrus portal, and the checklist. My colleague Gabriel Bodard will show you the database Papyri Info and give a quick overview over the so-called Leiden conventions, a system of brackets and rules to indicate the condition of an ancient document. Then Lucia Vannini will talk briefly about another important tool, Trismegistus. Let's start with the overview. In papyrology, we discern 5 periods: the pre-Ptolemaic, the Ptolemaic, the Roman, the Byzantine, and the Arabic period. In 332-31 BC, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt and founded its later new capital, Alexandria. When Alexander died in 323 BC, Ptolemaeus, son of Lagos, the general under Alexander the Great, governed Egypt as a satrap for Philip III Arrhidaeus, and since 316 BC for Alexander IV. In 305 BC, Ptolemaeus assumed kingship over Egypt as Ptolemaeus I Soter. And 300 years of the so-called Ptolemaic period began. Under the first 3 Ptolemies, Egypt experienced a golden age. The Ptolemies expanded into the countries around the Mediterranean Sea. There was an economic upswing, also because of the maritime trade, and new agricultural land was opened up in the interior of Egypt. The Library of Alexandria was founded according to the sources by Ptolemy II, and the Fayum was opened up. The Septuagint was produced. Since Ptolemaeus IV Philopator, however, mismanagement had taken place. Military failures against the Seleucids and revolts of indigenous groups occurred. For example, after the Battle of Raphia, 217 BC. And constant quarrels about the throne, for example, between Ptolemaeus VI Philometor and Ptolemaeus VIII Euergetes II, contributed to the decline of the Ptolemaic realm. At the same time, Rome arose but had an interest in the east after the defeat of Hannibal. In 146 BC, Macedonia became a Roman province. and Rome approached the borders of Egypt constantly. When Antiochus IV invaded Egypt, Rome was helping Egypt to keep its independence. Subsequently, Egypt acted politically in favor of Rome. Rome carried more and more weight on Egypt. In 31 BC, the Battle of Actium took place in the course of civil war between Mark Antony and Octavian. In 30 BC, Egypt became finally a Roman province. The Roman period. During Roman times, Egypt had no political significance anymore. The emperor of Rome is worshipped as Pharaoh, like all his predecessors. The Prefectus Egypti, in Greek eparchos or hegemon, governs the new province. Most of the administration of Ptolemaic times had survived, with some changes, like new taxes, for example. Egypt was now the granary of Rome and did not economize for itself anymore. This made Egypt the most important province for Rome. The Romans organized the administration well and controlled it constantly. With this organization under Augustus, Tiberius, Trajan, Hadrian, and Antoninus Pius, the land prospered economically. In 130, Hadrian founded the so-called Greek town Antinopolis. In 212 AD, the Constitutio Antoniniana of Caracalla gave Roman citizenship to every free inhabitant of the Roman realm. In the reign of Decius, from 249 to 251 AD, there was a persecution of Christians that lasted until Constantine's Edict of Tolerance in 313. When Diocletian came to power, the Byzantine period began. His goal was to eliminate the last formal rests of the Roman Republic and to standardize the administration of his realm. Egypt is divided into 3 independent parts. The financial and juridical administration were Romanized, and Greek and Egyptian elements, like, for example, the dating after the king or emperor, replaced the dating by the consuls. Emperor Constantine, who ended the persecution of Christians, founded 326 AD Constantinople anew, the Old Byzantium, and made it the new capital in 330 AD. Christianity will be now the state religion. In 395 AD, the Roman realm decayed into Western and Eastern Roman Empire. Egypt was part of the Eastern Roman Empire as part of the Diocesis Oriens. From now on, Egypt nourished with its crown the new capital, Constantinople. With invasions of the Nubian in the south, economic difficulties, and the exploitation from outside, Egypt was destabilized. This opened the doors for the invasion of the Sassanids in 1619, and later that of the Arabs in 639. There is where the Arabic period begins. In 641 AD, the Arabs finally managed to conquer Egypt. The Christianity was pushed back. The Greek and Roman culture vanished. Arabic was the new language of administration. They wrote their old paper, the so-called rag paper, whose manufacturing they learned maybe from the people of Oriental countries. The decay of Greek papyri began, and the papyrus died out in Egypt. We still find papyri until the 10th century AD in Egypt, but they became rare. This is when the period for papyrology ends after 1,000 years. The history of papyrology is in 1752, which marks the beginning of papyrology as a science, when the Villa Herculanese dei Papyri was discovered in Herculaneum, south of Italy, which was covered by the ashes of Vesuvius in 79 AD. You can see here a replica of the Villa dei Papyri, the J. Paul Getty Museum in Malibu. Calpurnius Piso, a friend of Cicero, owned this house. In his library, the researchers found circa 800 carbonized papyri, containing works of Epicurus, Aristotle, Philodemos, and other Epicureans. Sir Walter Scott published a part of the finding in 1885. In 1778, some Egyptian fellahin found on their land circa 50 papyrus rolls. An Italian merchant bought from them only one scroll. The fellahin were disappointed that they could not sell more of those scrolls and burned them, according to the myth, for enjoying at least the smell of the papyri. Maybe they simply dumped them. The scroll of the merchant found its way into the hands of the Cardinal Stefano Bodard, and thus it was known from now on as Charta Borgiana. It contained a list of names of dike workers from 192-3 from Ptolemy's home in Tunis, and was published in 1788 by the Danish scholar Nicholas Scholl under the title Charta Papyracea Graecae Scriptae Musei Portani Bellitris in Rome. From 1815 to 1825, private excavations in the neighborhood of Memphis and Thebes brought some papyri to the light. From 1821 to 1865, international scholars published here and there a couple of papyri. With the boom of agriculture in Egypt under the then Khedive Ismail Pasha in 1870, earth for fertilization was taken from the antique rubbish dumps, where a lot of papyri came to light. After learning about the price of papyri, the fellahin began to look for papyri systematically by digging up graves and destroying mummies and sarcophagi. In 1887, excavation at Dime, the antique Sopnopionesos, in the north of the Oasis Fayoum, began. The Christian and Hebrew papyri Cheskabiti were found there, as well as a scroll from Aristotle's work, The Constitution of Athens, and a scroll of Herodotus. Those finds attracted the attention of philologists. In 1891, several philological texts on papyrus were published. In 1898, the term papyrology occurred the first time when Frederick Kenyon reviewed the catalogue of the British Museum. And he said, papyrology, if we may use such a word. Since those days, papyrology was acknowledged as an individual branch of classical studies. In the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century, the Englishmen, Bernard Granford and Arthur Hunt, continued the excavations of Linus Petrie with bigger success and found papyri in Oxyrhynchos, Tunis, and Tibet. German scholars like Ulrich Wilken, Paul Viereck, Otto Rubensohn, Wilhelm Schubert, Ludwig Mitteis, and Friedrich Preisicke pushed papyrology forward with their excavations and publications. Italian scholars like Evariste Brecha, or French scholars like Pierre Jouguet followed the example of their colleagues. Thus, papyrology became an important research area in Europe and later, after the First World War, in the whole world. Papyrology deals with texts, especially from Egypt, which are written on papyri, ostraka, wooden or wax tablets, parchment, leather, fabrics, bones, etc. Documentary papyri are, in contrast to literary papyri, documents of the everyday life, not meant to be published like books or other literature. Most of the papyri were found in Egypt because of its dry climate. In humid regions, like for example in Alexandria and the Nile Delta, the material decays. Exceptions are carbonized papyri, like those found in the Villa Herculanesi dei Papyri, preserved under the ashes of Vesuvius in 79 AD. An archive of a banker was preserved under the same circumstances on wax tablets. Through special light, like infrared technology, one can read carbonized papyri. Papyri are found, for example, in graves, private houses, official archives, or antique dumps. In antiquity, papyrus was also used after archive disposals as filler for mummies or as mummy cartonnage. Papyrus was as writing material is an Egyptian invention from the 3rd millennium BC and was exported into the whole world of Mediterranean. Plinius, in his Natural History, book 1370, tells us the anecdote of the export prohibition for papyrus during Hellenistic times because of the competition of Ptolemy II and Eumenes II, which one has the best library. The king in Pergamon, not having papyrus anymore to copy books, invented thus the parchment. The papyrus sheet, the chartes, was manufactured from the papyrus plant, papyrus. The stem was peeled and cut into stripes. Those stripes were put next to another. Another layer was put orthogonally across and pressed to the first layer. The Egyptian papyrus didn't need artificial glue because of its juice. Plinius provides us in his Natural History with a description of manufacturing papyrus. The scroll, the tomos, contains 20 sheets, cellulose, pasted one to another. In addition, there are also tomoi syncolesimoi, the scroll containing individual documents glued one to another for archiving purposes. The sheet is called kolema, and the procedure of pasting together is called colesis. During the Ptolemaic period, the scroll was about 320 by 32 centimeters. Normally, the inner side of a scroll is called recto. The fibers run horizontally and the colesis is visible. The other side is called verso. Usually one wrote first on the recto, then on the verso, so that the recto is often older than the verso. If the writing runs across the fibers on the recto, however, we say that the papyrus was written transversa carta. The ink was often black due to its components: carbon black, charcoal or bone char, Arabic gum and water. Besides, there was iron gall ink, a mix from iron salts and oak galls with a binder agent. This ink is purple-black or brownish. The ink was applied on the papyrus with a rush or a reed. The latter is called calamus. The whole human life is preserved on papyrus, from a simple notice to a king's decree. There's also literature that was handed down like Aristotle's missed work Athenaia and Politeia, or the Menander Comedy Discourse. We also find testimonies for diverse religions like Christianity. Papyri are giving us a genuine image of the life in antiquity, of the problems of the normal people and their environment. To understand this life in antiquity, papyri are a very important source. How to handle those sources when dealing with historical topics is the aim of this course today. As an example, I've chosen the topic of manumission of slaves in Greco-Roman Egypt. There are different types of manumission. So you can release a slave, for example, by a testament, often combined with a paramonie clause, which binds the slave, so free, to the heirs to perform certain duties for them. You can release a slave by a notary document. The slave will be pronounced free through a herald. You can release a slave by manumission inter amicos, an informal form of manumission, maybe in front of witnesses, and so on. In papyrology, you have several possibilities to approach this topic that complement one another. I will show you two of them. First, you can look it up in a bibliography. Second, you can look it up directly in the sources. For historians, there are many bibliographies online. One special bibliography, not only for historians, but especially for papyrologists, is a bibliography Papyrology, a tool which exists since 1932, founded in Bruxelles by Marcel Humbert and Henry B. van Heusen, with the help of the Fondation, today Association Reine Elisabeth. Then the bibliography was printed on file cards and sent to libraries. Later, floppy disks, readable, programmed FileMaker, were distributed by snail mail. Now they send files by email. As you will see, there's also an electronic version online, as well as a basic search form on Papyri Info. As the files are still distributed to subscribers in form of an email, the online version of the bibliographie papyrologique do not cover the current year's bibliographic information, but only those from the past years, from 1932 onwards. The format of those cards was as follows. In the first cell, there was an index. The index referred to a special code of order the bibliography was filed. The second cell was reserved for bibliographic information, like the name of the author and the title of his article or book. In cell number 3, one finds information about where the article was published or the rest of the publishing information in case of a book. Cell number 4 is the most important cell for searching the bibliography. It contains a brief resume of the content of the work, mostly in French, though, and provides the possibilities of a full text search. The remaining fields contain information about the publication in the Sammelbuch, the compendium that collects all papyrus publications outside a volume of editions. And you find information here of where to find reviews to the article or book, some internal numbers, and again, the author's name and year of publication. So we will pass online now. And if you look for a topic like the manumission of slaves, the best way to begin a search, which depends, of course, of your preferences, is to type a part of the word into the field for resume here, like Manumission. It automatically starts a wildcard search on this word, so the word Manumission will be found, as well as the Latin Manumission and its forms. In the results already, you can look after the term in other languages and starting over. Here you have, for example, the German term Freilassung. You have Manumission. You have also here the Latin term Manumission, and also here affranchissement, the French term. As you can see, the titles often do not give a hint that the article is treating a manumission. So, like here, die Gallier Nervus des Republicae, die indirekten Steuern in der römischen Kaiserzeit, is not referring to any type of manumission, but you have here the text on the manumission. The bibliography, though, is not always the best way to find all of the topics, because it depends on the search terms. A complement on your search will be the search via the sources itself. We will show you how it works. Das Heidelberger Gesamtverzeichnis der griechischen Papyrusgruppen Ägyptens was initiated in 1988. It is a database collecting all metadata of published papyri, linked to other databases we will deal with later. As it is a German project, the HGV is searched with German terms. As for our purpose, we will search for terms containing Freilass, for Freilassung, as a wildcard search. So you will have results like Sklavenfreilassung or simply Freilassung or similar terms. For this, we click on Suchen, the search field here, and you can see that a lot of search fields appear. So, first of all, you can decide if you want an AND search or an OR search, meaning results containing all search terms or results with only one of the search terms. You can then look up a specific publication, we'll show you on later, a specific place, here Ort, a specific range of date, here chronological search, the material, if it's a papyrus or a stripon, etc. The content, Inhalt, if there are translations or images, and a TM number here, meaning a specific number to identify a data set in a database called Trismegistos, which will be presented by Lucia. Finally, you can sort your results, but by default, the results are sorted chronologically. If you want to find papyri containing the topic Manumission, in Ptolemaic or Roman times, you have to insert into the content field Freilass, for Freilassung or Sklavenfreilassung, and maybe Sklaven for Sklaven, because we're dealing with slaves, to prevent results on releases from jail or something similar. In the year field, you put minus 332 for the Ptolemaic period, 332 BC. 3 dots means until, and 384 end of the Roman period. And in the century field here, Jahrhundert, you put -4 for the 4th century BC until the 3rd century AD to prevent the search engine to include results where only the century is specified. The date search is at the AGV more powerful and more precise than in other databases. You can see that there are 32 results, and you learn other terms for searching the bibliography Papyrology. For example, Freilassung, Emanzipazione, Emancipation, Manumission, something like that. The continuous numbers on the left are the links to the result. Then you have the publication numbers, the date, the place, and the original title. As you can see, the original title that often does not contain any sign of having to do with Manumission of slaves. Vergabung auf den Todesfall, for example, or Testament, Sunto di Testamento. So, if you click on one of those links, like here, you will see the whole datasheet of the publication mentioned. On the top, you see the publication number. On the right of it, the already mentioned Trismegistus number, beneath the original title, the place, and the date. Then, the material, here in this case it is papyrus. If there is an image in the publication, plate 28, and the content, here, a Manumission inter amicos. You have here the text of the papyrus taken from the database Papyri info. And if there is an image online, you can see it here and click on it to be linked to its original location online. Here it is linked to the Papyrus project Halle Jena Leipzig, a database with published and unpublished papyri of the collections of Leipzig, Jena, and Halle, where you can find sometimes also translations of the papyrus, like here, in this case. You have also the possibility to search for unpublished papyri here in the research form. And you can go directly also to the papyrus portal through the Organa Papyrologica link. Here you have the papyrus portal. And this is a project developed in 2009, uniting all European collections, or several European collections, where you can search, where you can search for published and unpublished papyri in those collections. Since these collections were German projects, you will look for German terms mostly. You can search for title, language, material, or text type, for example, documentary, paraliterary, literary, date, place, content, and perform a full text search. In our case, we could perform a full text search for Sklad, and Freilassung. Note the asterisks here in this case for searching. And we will get, of all these databases, some results for 2 from the Berlin collection, 2 from the Leipzig collections, 1 of it unpublished. And you can see the links are linking to the original database for Leipzig, to the Leipzig Papyrus project, shown before, for Berlin to their database. Coming back to the IGV, how do we proceed with that information? Every publication of a papyrus contains a lot of information because each document is presented with an extended commentary on the topic and a commentary line by line, where topics and the use of special words and phrases are treated and complemented by parallels and literature. In the header here of the datasheet, you see P-Lips 2151. This is a key to the publication. P means simply papyrus, whereas an O would mean publication of ostraca. Lips means Lipsier for Leipzig, and the Roman number is the number of the volume, the Arabic number, the number of the papyrus in it. How do we know what lips means, you will ask? Well, there is a list called Checklist of Editions of Greek, Latin, Demotic and Coptic Papyri, Ostraca and Tablets, founded by the editors John F. Oates and William H. Willis, and first published in the Bulletin of American Association of Papyrologists, number 11, in 1974. Afterwards, it was distributed with the Packard Humanities Institute, CDR. Nowadays, the checklist is online. There you can look up all the abbreviations of papyrus edition, analog tools and Congress volumes, and their solution. So, with this example, we have here the Leipzig Papyri, and you can see also that the first volume is present on archive.org and can be downloaded there. As soon as you are more experienced with the abbreviations of the editions, you will seek the newest edition that will have, hopefully, a good bibliography on the topic you are dealing with. The other link here, link to all the papyri of the Leipzig Papyri in the full text database of Papyri Info, which unites the full text of published and sometimes unpublished papyri with the information from HEV and First Magisters. My colleague Gabriel Bodard will explain this database to you now. Okay.
Okay, Nadine, thank you very much. And now I think that we can go on with Gabriel.
Yeah. Hi, thank you. So just give me a second to share the screen. Right. So the slides I'm using to introduce Papyri.info here are slides that Lucia, who will talk a little bit later, helped us to create and co-authored. So that's why her name's on this first slide. I'm here. I'm not going to go through these slides as fully as we normally do when we present these. These are slides that we presented for Epidoc training, and we normally go through in great detail and explain the history of Papyri Info. But I'm going to go through a little bit more quickly than that and just really summarize the important details that turn Papyri Info into the resource that it is, because it's really a portal which brings together multiple originally disparate databases, some of which you've heard about already from Nadine, and in some cases takes those databases over, and in other cases just aggregates the content of those databases into a search interface. But because the content of these databases are from different sources, the act of searching aggregately across them all is not always entirely straightforward or painless. So just as a very quick sort of overview of the history, the Papyri info site is the result of a project that was called Integrating Digital Papyrology that was funded by the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation in 3 phases between 2007 and 2011. Which involved multiple institutions, and it involved multiple teams collaborating to convert basically the content of these various databases, starting with the Duke Databank of Documentary Papyri, which had the Greek texts in most cases, or Latin texts, of some 55,000 papyrus and ostracan and tablets from the ancient, mostly from the Egyptian world. In a database that was converted into Epidoc. The Heidelberger Gesamtverzeichnis, which you've already heard about, was also, we call it crosswalked into Epidoc, because the Heidelberger Gesamtverzeichnis still exists in its original form, which is a FileMaker Pro database, but there is an Epidoc version of it in addition on the Papyri info site. And the 3 phases of this project brought together, these projects brought together the APIS project, which was a set of catalogue data from multiple libraries and other institutions that held papyri, and also eventually brought in the Bibliographie Papyrologique, and combined these all, having converted all of these into Epidoc XML, which you heard a little bit about if you were following this course back in February, in the second week of the SunoikisisDC Digital Classics season. And on top of this built 2 major tools, and these were the Papyrological Navigator, which I'll show you in a moment, and the Papyrological Editor, which we talked about, I think, a little bit more a few weeks ago, and so we won't go into too much detail today. The interesting thing about the Papyrological Editor, rather than talking about how it works and what the encoding it uses, is that the content of Papyri info, including the content of all 4 of the main contributing data sets, is being improved and enhanced and contributed to by members of the papyrological community. It's a crowdsourcing project, if you were, although the crowd of people who are qualified papyrologists is rather smaller than the crowd of people who might have an interest in recognizing galaxies, for example, in some of the more famous crowdsourcing projects that pull in tens of thousands of contributors. There may not be, there may not even be 1,000 qualified papyrologists on the planet. I don't expect, but so it's a much smaller process than that. The Papyrological Navigator, however, and so this is just next couple of slides, which you can see that they're the PDFs downloadable on GitHub, and I'm not going to go through in great detail. Describes the 4 main projects. So we've got the Databank of Duke. The Duke Databank of Documentary Papyri, which has, as I said, it had the text, but almost no bibliography or supporting data attached to the text. There was the APIS catalog data, as I mentioned a moment ago. There's the HGV, Heidelberg Gesamtverzeichnis, that you've already heard about, and the Bibliographie Papyrologique that you've already heard about. And the Papyrological Navigator is the main tool that brings these together. So what this essentially gives you is a very, very detailed search interface, which enables you to search for any of the information across the records, whichever database those records came from. And the important thing that makes this possible is that thanks to the Trismegistos project, which again you'll hear about in a minute, the records have been linked to one another. So whether it's a record in the Duke Databank or a record in the HGV, they all share an identifying number, which comes from the Trismegistos database, which has identifying numbers for all published papyri. And so if you search for something, you can find the results in the HTV data, or in the Duke text, or in APIS data, or in some other content from the other contributing databases. And you'll get back in your search results all the information that is known about that text or that object or that record from all of the databases that have something on it. And not all content is in all of the databases, of course. Almost all of the content that is in either Duke or HTV is also in the other, but quite a lot of the content in APIS is not in the other two, and quite a lot of the content in the others is not in APIS, for example. So the overlap is relatively small there. And so as you can see from this screen, and I suggest you go to Papyri Info and have a look at it yourself to see more how this search works. You can either do a text search up here on the left, top left, with where you can search for plain text, you can search for substrings and so forth. You can do regular expression search if that's your thing. You can search specifically in abbreviations. You can do negative searches, so you can say, I want to look for this word, but I only want to find it when this other word is not in close proximity to it, and so forth. So there's various fairly sophisticated text search you can do there, or potentially more user-friendly, if you like, is the what's called the faceted browse interface. So you can, and you see the top of that in the bottom left down there, and it goes on for a bit further, where you, in effect, by default, you get the search results are everything, so all 100,000 or more records in Papyri Info. But you can then filter it down by various types of information. And you can see on this screenshot, I've filtered by provenance, and I've said, just show me those files that you have whose provenance is Abu Mena, and Abu Mena has 1069 papyri, so that's already narrowed it down to about 1% of the collection. And you can filter by date, you can filter by language, you can filter by various other kinds of information, and that sort of searching that you get from that. The important thing, though, is that as I said a moment ago, what you find depends to some degree in which database this information is recorded. So if you're looking for something using an English search term, you may not find it if that information is only in the HTV, because the HTV records that information in Latin. So the text is called a quittum, rather than whatever that's a receipt, isn't it? And so forth. So you have to be aware of these, how this data is structured and which language you're searching in. If the data you're looking for, on the other hand, is in the APIS catalog record, then the content is usually in English, but sometimes in another language if the language of the catalog that it comes from is different. And if the information you're looking for is in the Duke databank, what you get there rather is just the Greek text or the Latin text, or Coptic text or whatever. So there's almost no metadata in there. So you won't find the word Sklaven in the Duke databank because they don't have that sort of information. So what language you put your search term in may depend a little bit on which database you expect to find that information in. If you want to find this term across all, whichever database that information may come from, that you may have to come up with some sophisticated ways to figure out how to search for that. So that's a sort of summary of what the information in the Duke databank, in the Papyrological Navigator and Papyri Info looks like, whether this information is Duke databank or HTV or APIS information. The Papyrological Editor, I've mentioned, it enables people to contribute and to correct and improve the texts in Papyri Info, and this is very valuable. This is something we would very much like to be able to show people how to do in more detail, but don't really have time for today. Rather, I want to talk a little bit more about the Greek text that you've seen here on this slide is full of these brackets and other symbols that Nadine has already mentioned. These are defined by the Leiden conventions. A papyrologist will look at this and will immediately understand what is different about that he at the beginning of line 2 from the letter following it, because one is in square brackets, the other has a dot appearing underneath it, and why are there parentheses at the end of this word, and various other things that that appear in this text. This may be less obvious to someone who's not from a papyrological or epigraphic background, who doesn't necessarily know those. So and we talked about the Leiden conventions a little bit back in the second session a couple of months ago. This is just repeating the slide that we used for that, and I'm not going to go into this in as much detail as I did back in February, but essentially those letters that are in square brackets in the text are letters that are missing in the papyrus, usually because of damage or loss, and have been restored by the editor. The letters that had dots beneath them in the papyrus were letters that are slightly damaged and therefore would have been ambiguous, except because of the context of the word, we can figure out what they are, but maybe we couldn't figure it out if they were in isolation. And those letters that had parentheses around them were letters that were omitted from the papyrus entirely as a form of abbreviation or suspension, where the scribe didn't bother writing those letters because you would understand from the context that a 3-letter word was actually short for a longer word, and so these symbols make up the Leiden conventions. And if you didn't follow back in February and you want to know more, there are links at the bottom of the slide here to some more information about the Leiden conventions, or just Google for the Leiden conventions and you'll probably find the Wikipedia page before anything else. So looking more closely at that bit of Greek text that we saw, what's going on? What are all these symbols on the page actually representing? Well, the square brackets mean that letter he in line 2 is not any longer on the papyrus. It was originally written there, or at least we think it was, but is now been completely lost. But we can tell from the rest of the word that it must be a he there, so the editor has decided that is there. The epsilon after it is still partially visible. It may be not much more than the serif at the right hand end of the top stroke or something like that, but something of that letter is visible on the papyrus, but not enough that if it wasn't in the middle of the word Henebrit, we would know what it was. So it's underdotted rather than square bracketed. Likewise, these parentheses here represent the fact that Henebrit is what was written on the papyrus. It's pretty sure that was an abbreviation for a longer word, but because those parentheses are left blank, we don't know what the word it was an abbreviation for. Unlike here, when on was written on the papyrus, and we do know that was short for onikai, so it's expanded there. And the part that is not written on the papyrus is the part that is in parentheses. These little crux symbols here, the dagger or cross signs, are simply the fact that there was a cross, a stavros, drawn on the papyrus at the beginning and end of this text. And this symbol in here, this is not parentheses marking an abbreviation. This asterisk is literally just a link down to the apparatus telling you that on line 2, where it says forre on the papyrus, we should read forre. The slightly more, the more standard spelling would be the one given down below. So this is, as I say, this is something which papyrologists don't normally explain to themselves, because everyone uses the same set of standards, the same set of brackets to mean the same things, and therefore it communicates fairly well. And as I again explained back in February, this same set of brackets in the Leiden conventions has a very standard translation into the standard XML encoding for text editions, and this standard mapping is called epidoc, which says that when you find square brackets in the Leiden, this is how you would mark it up in XML, and this can be equally standard and universally understood in the computing realm. But I'm not going to go into that in any detail now, as I say. So that's where I want to stop, and I will hand over to Lucia, who is going to talk a little bit about the last of the databases in our session, the Trismegistos database.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel.
Yes, so sharing my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, it works.
Okay, so Trismegistos is a project of the University of Leuven, and it's a metadata platform for texts from the ancient world, made of several interconnected relational databases. Trismegistos doesn't focus on texts or images, but rather on metadata, as we can see from an example of this record, which is about a papyrus from the Zenon archive. In each record of a papyrus, we can find the editions and the inventory numbers and the information on material, language, provenance, and so on. Anyway, each record links to other resources where texts, images, and further information can be found, like databases of the single collection, where the fragments are housed, or the papal image database, or the HGB, or the Duke databank database, which displays the text of the papyrus. And we can also find the text displayed here in Trismegistos, as we can see at the bottom of the record. The text is scraped from the Papyrological Navigator. As indicated, we should anyway always refer to the Papyrological Navigator to read the most updated version of the text. Trismegistos records also provide a unique identifier for each text, as we already heard, which is used in many papyrological collections to disambiguate the text. More metadata that are provided are related information displayed in the sidebar, like the modern physical collections where the fragments are housed. And all these pieces of information have links that point to one of the databases interconnected in Trismegistos. So, for example, if we click on Cairo, Egyptian Museum, we will be brought to a page of the Trismegistos collection database, which displays information on the museum and also charts with statistical analysis of the collection content. So the language is attested in that collection and the materials. We also find listed at the bottom all the texts preserved in that museum. Then, going back to the record of our text, we see that we can also connect to the Trismegistos archives database in archives info in the sidebar. The archives database provides information on the ancient archive the papyrus belongs to, in this case the Zenon archive. Here we find listed all the modern collections where papyri from this archive are housed, and all the texts that editors have identified as related to this archive that is to a specific person, as we can see in the sidebar. Then, going back again to the record of the text, we find information on any place mentioned in the text and to any person mentioned in places info and in people info in the sidebar. Again, if we click on Places Info, we are brought to the related page of the Trismegistus Places database, with a list of all the places mentioned in the papyrus. And from here, if we click on a name like Memphites, we can display geographical information about that place and a list of all the attestations. The important databases in Trismegistus. We can also browse through them from the homepage where they are all listed, and we can also find a database of modern editors of papyri and inscriptions, and database of ancient authors, of literary authors found in papyri. And we can also find graphs with network analysis of relationships between people attested in ancient documents, and we can also create our own network. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Lucia, thank you very much for presenting us with Trismegistus, and thank you all for the rich presentation of digital papyrology. I can say one thing. So Gabriel said that, well, of course, these projects are possible thanks to crowdsourcing. And okay, but we have a crowd of papyrologists, of course. When we say crowd, well, it is not like crowd for other projects or in the common sense of crowd, but we can say that for papyrology, we really have very important digital projects, and they are modern, and papyrologists started many years ago. So their contribution is really fundamental in general to the digital humanities and to digital classics in this specific case. So we have a crowd, I can say. We can agree on that. We have many people contributing to this project. So really, papyrologists are a model for all of us, for classicists and in general for people working with ancient sources. This is the first thing. And today, we have seen, in fact, many resources. I don't know if there are questions. Other questions? Our guests are shy sometimes. Can I say that?
One other thing we could do, if there aren't any immediate questions, is we could very quickly. So Nadine has prepared some exercises that students might want to do to build on this this work we've done, and we could. It's linked in the common session, and you can download a PDF with this in. But we can very quickly show an exercise that Nadine has prepared. Did you want to very quickly talk through it, Nadine? I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory, but
well, we can present them.
Yeah, can you? I can't share it because maybe it's
okay. So I will try.
Do you want to force my screen and then we can...
I can say it would be great.
Yes, thank you.
And then I'll scroll down whenever you want me to.
Okay, excellent.
So, the first exercise is about the Leiden conventions. Gabby presented to you some of the symbols and brackets, and you have the list in the presentation. And here I have as an example, 2 texts with highlights in it, and you have simply to explain the brackets and symbols you find there, like in Papyrology 19. For example, you have square brackets in the first line. You have those, I don't know, how do you, these, you have round brackets, you have a single quote.
Yes.
I don't know how to say it in English. So you have dots under the letters. You have double square brackets, and so you have to explain just those highlighted. And like in Sebaste, you have 2 things to explain, for example, or in Paulay, also we have square brackets and dots. Explain those. In line 11, you have after synchrony, this 2 in double square brackets, and so on. So the highlighted words you can explain as an exercise.
Because when a papyrologist looks at an edition like this, even if there is no photograph in the edition, the papyrologist, by seeing the brackets and the other symbols in there, the papyrologist kind of constructs a photograph in their mind. They kind of understand what the papyrus looked like because they can see that. So what we wanted for students to attempt to reconstruct what the papyrus looks like based on these brackets in the text.
Yeah. And then you have a second exercise, the research tools for using them. Okay, Gabby, maybe you want to explain?
Well, so the first 3 parts of that are self-explanatory. There's a research question. You've been given 4 different links there to different tools that you can do to search for. It's similar but not quite the same research question that Nadine showed you in the class. And so look for each one and try to find what results you can find on the subject of the sale of slaves in these 4 data sets and these 4 different kinds of searches. And then what we'd like you to do is to tabulate those results, by which I mean draw those, write down your results in 4 separate columns with what you learned from database 1, what you learned from the bibliography Papyrology, what you learned from HGV, what you learned from the Papyri info, and think about in which of these areas, in which areas are these databases stronger. So some of them will be better at finding certain kinds of information than others. Think about which are most useful in what ways. And then we'd like you to think, as the final question, how useful would it be, and in what ways would it be useful to be able to find this information from databases that all link together rather than having to do 4 separate searches? What research could you do by integrating this data that you couldn't do without so? And what things might you lose? What dangers might there be in integrating this data rather than keeping it in 4 separate places? So to sort of think about that sort of thing. And this might be something to discuss in class or discuss with your local tutor or whatever. Or we'd be happy to hear from you if you had thoughts about this as well.
Yes, thank you very much so you have this exercise in GitHub as a PDF, so you have the detailed description. And then going back to the Leiden conventions, exactly, so you said that they are a form of markup, definitely, and this is the first step for interpreting text, because of course, when we read text, and when we start using these Leiden conventions for marking up the text, with markup, we interpret the text in the end, and we can have different interpretations of the text. So going also back to your last question, Gabby, when you say, okay, how could it be useful for this project to work together? Yes, that's the thing. How also can we represent different interpretations of the same text? We can do that, we know, but working in a collaborative environment, of course, is challenging also from this perspective. We can't have one deep reading of a text.
There are also other tools like the Berichtigungsliste, where the readings are combined and corrected, and it is displayed by Papyri info also, and by a Berichtigungsliste online with the Heidelberg projects. We didn't show you this because it's too detailed for the beginning. And there are a lot of other tools also. So if you look a little bit on Papyri info, you play around with the functions, you will see how the things are really connected and how they work together.
Yes, no, exactly. There are resources to see this. And the other thing I think is another question, do we still need the so-called diplomatic transcription, in the sense that we have seen with pictures, and now we have transcription of the Greek text with Leiden conventions, which is not technically the diplomatic transcription, because the diplomatic transcription tries to represent the text as it is on the papyrus. But now that we have many pictures online thanks to digital resources, so do we still need a diplomatic transcription? This is a question also for epigraphy, maybe more for epigraphy. And for papyri we have more pictures because it's easier. Yes, but it is another interesting question in the community. But definitely adding Leiden conventions is a good exercise to try to represent what you see in the picture. And when in the past we didn't have so many pictures, also colored pictures, because in the past we had many black and white pictures also for papyri. The situation was different, but definitely is a good exercise to try to imagine what is on the papyrus when you read the text with Leiden conventions. Yes.
So what I wanted to say in the slides we put on GitHub, you will find also a little list with important links. So it will help you. I hope so.
Yes, yes, thank you very much.
Some further readings.
Yes, definitely, because your slides have many pictures, links, and they are important. So if you're interested, you can go through these links and explore many other resources. Definitely, Papyrology has been doing a great work, we can say that, because
we had
a small crowd.
We had a lot of time.
Well, yes, a lot of time, passion, because the passion is the first thing, but definitely I think that this feels really a model for working in the digital humanities and in digital classics. So,
papyrologists are famous, especially in the epigraphic world. Papyrologists are famous for the fact that they work together and that they're polite to each other and so forth. Which I don't want to say epigraphists aren't, but nevertheless they are surprised by how nice papyrologists are to each other. This is an academically important thing as well as just a joking comment, but it's that kind of collaboration that is absolutely essential, especially when we start working in the digital realm.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Gabriel, for mentioning this. This is another important aspect, especially now for crowdsourcing and for the collaborative environments that we are trying to build. Definitely, you are a model, and the Papyrology is a good example. It's true. You have the term and you have the expression. We don't have it in other fields within classics. Okay, so I don't know if there are other questions. I don't think so. We have and now, okay, is 6. Okay, thank you. Anise, yes. Thank you for being with us. Okay, I think we can finish our session on time. It's 6:15, and next week we have another session, so we go on talking about digital papyrology, thanks to this introduction, and we will talk about literary papyri. There is an important big difference, of course, between documentary papyri and literary papyri. And next week we have Nicola Reggiani from Parma, Maria Vieros from Helsinki, and then again Lucia Vannini, who will join us again for another session. So, thank you all really for this interesting SunoikisisDC session.
Thank you for watching.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, and see you next week. And goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.